to be focused on national development. Uh, that's what we now want to get into. And this area, I'm particularly talking to the young people who, I guess, if anyone under the age of 35, I believe, is included in this group, but particularly, I guess, those who've probably in high school or in university or early 20s as well, particularly to this group. Before I do go in, I do face a few risks and challenges in what I'm about to say, and the first being privilege. The things I'm saying are coming from someone who's lived a comfortable life with no problems, who's never gone to sleep hungry, who probably has more than he needs, And so some of the things I say may be tone deaf, they may be, what can I say? I think you understand what I'm trying to say, that it can be easy to say these things from a point of privilege, but if you were to be in the actual situation you're talking about, things could be slightly different. But with that being said, I do ask that you hear me out and that we see together if there's any merit in some of the things I'm saying. Right. So, what am I saying? We all know that the situation in Zimbabwe right now is not the best. It's not where it used to be, it's not where it could be. And even if it was, it wouldn't mean that there would be no need for this conversation to be had. I believe as young people, we don't talk about matters to do with the development of our nation enough. I think we are reliant or we just expect the powers that be to just, do things. But it's interesting to see that everywhere in the world, the people in power say the young people are the ones to save this generation. But I don't hear any young people talking about development. Or maybe I do, but not at the scale at which they should be, right? And there's three variables that I would like to look at. Three things: our time, our energy, and also our money. And I want to use the example of parties in this video. Um, when it comes to parties, of course, there's no shortage of parties, but you can't go to a party without paying for the ticket, paying for transport, and buying food or drinks. And every young person goes out. As far as I know, every young person goes out. But, some of the challenges that are faced when people go out is sometimes is a transportation issue or other issues that may come up. I've never seen such problem solving as that exhibited by the people who encounter these problems. If there's so many people but only so little transport to get to a particular venue, a solution will be found like that, even if it's a money issue or whatever. When it comes to going out, young people will always find a way to go out. So our money is going there, our time is going there, and our energy is going there. But I don't see the same level of investment in terms of ideas or discussions about the development of our nation. When I usually speak to young people about this stuff, and I'm no expert, I just ask questions as well, like, guys, what do you think we could do, or whatever, whatever. The answer you get is, I feel you, bro. It's tough. Mawan, Shaloma. These are the answers we get. But it's not good enough. Nothing will change. I said this in, I think, one of my very first videos, that they say that the youth of Africa have a whole continent in their hands. But then I ask, if we have a whole continent in our hands, what is in our minds? I'm not saying don't go for parties, but we need to have a bit more in our heads than just groove and vibes and all of that stuff. I believe we need to be asking questions. I believe we need to be discussing. It doesn't mean we have the answers. But imagine if we took 10% of the time we devote to some of these things, 10% of the energy, you know, 10% of all those resources, and just put them towards ideas and discussion around the development of our nation. I wonder where we would be. Some things do not need so much money. Some things don't even need any money. There's a lot of problems that we all know are prevalent in our country, But if they're spoken about once or twice, and then it dies down. So that I won't go too deep into it today, but just to make you guys aware of some of these things that I've been thinking about, maybe we will change the theme of the Sunday Sundowners to a reflection, but also a check in regarding our nation. You know, there's so many things from even cultural things besides the development of our nations. A lot of people don't know, and I'm not so clear myself on things like what is our totem, what's the meaning of a totem, why do we have them? If we were taught the flag back in primary school or preschool, but how many people can go through the flag today and give the proper meaning? You know, the history of our country, although that may be to do with our educational curriculum, and during Cambridge you don't learn about African history, particularly Zimbabwean history. But these are so many things that just define who we are as a nation, and we don't have any of that. So yeah, this is not an issue that can be covered in 2 minutes or 10 minutes, but it's one that has to be discussed over a lifetime. And I would like to get that started with us young people. This leads nicely into the third point that I wanted to discuss today, which was clubs and societies at schools. So I was at St. George's College, and I was a member of the Debating Society, the Toastmaster Society, Model United Nations, right, and a few others. But what I found interesting was, in these societies, we talk about real world problems, right? People bring fantastic arguments, debates, and sometimes it got quite heated, but at the end of it, it was fun. But the question that I have then is, after you finish upper six, so you're no longer a debater. Yeah, you no longer discuss the issues you discussed at Toastmasters or at MUN. These ideas just, I don't know, evaporate into the air and they're done. And we just double click our screens when we see it on Instagram. St. George's has been in existence since 1896. You're telling me that from each year, from more than 100 years ago, let's have a look at all the people who were in these societies. I'm not sure when these societies were started, maybe they were started later, but even if we take 10 or 20 years, to the people who learned at these schools, what did we then do with the knowledge, the skills we had acquired in these societies? Do they just rot? The issues we discussed at MUN, the formality and the etiquette we were taught, the way we were groomed, the exposure we had with different schools around the country. We would go to Bulawayo to discuss these things. We'll go to different schools. Some people would even go across the border to South Africa to have some of these debates and competitions. Some people even outside of Africa. I call on people like us who were in these societies, everyone, but particularly those who were already in these societies. Let's do something, guys. I don't know what it is. Let's get together, let's discuss and talk about these things so that we can develop our nation. If the government was to change today, what would change in your behavior? Nothing, because you'll say, oh, it's the president who's going to change it for us. No, it's not about the president. There's a lot of things we need to change for ourselves. At St. George's, we also had service projects. You couldn't go into A level without doing some form of community service. Some would go and teach at schools, some would go and help the sick people, some would go and help disabled people. But it's like, we just did that for a few months and then it's done. You don't do community service again. I may have overlooked the value of some of these principles we were taught back at school. I believe I did. We were taught that we are men for and with others. I guess now these goes as men and women for and with others. But what are we doing for others or with others? I've been doing a lot of research lately on people like Thomas Sankara, I watched something earlier today on Haile Selassie, and there's a lot of other people who I want to research. People like Jomo Kenyatta, Julius Nyerere, all of these people, our African heroes, because I don't see a lot of people like that today. In Zimbabwe, I know there's people like Hobart Chimono who are very vocal, and I look up to him. He's someone who has um, put across some ideas which I've looked at and found interesting, and these have inspired me to also talk about these things. Particularly right now, what's trending is registering to vote. Elections are around the corner. People are not registering to vote. So there's a lot of people locally who I look up to. There's people like King Kandoro who talk about issues like this. I know there's pages like Magamba TV, there's Madorofia Republic, there's so many people. Trevor Ngubi, I like what he's doing, interviewing people back home as well. But I don't see the same level of enthusiasm from the young people. Guys, the country is ours. To me, it excites me. And I could talk about so much, like there's so much that I could talk about. Right now I'm not in Zimbabwe, but I wish after classes, after my class at university, I could go back home to my family. Don't you wish you could do that too? If we develop our nation, perhaps we can do that so that we can go to local universities and after school we can go back home. There's so many things that I could talk about. This video, it's non-exhaustive. Issues of development are never exhaustive because it can always be more that can be done. But this is not a race. There's no room to be slow. We definitely have to be very fast. We have to be enthusiastic. We have to be passionate. We have to be focused. We have to take the initiative. But I felt that it was good to talk about this, do a video on it, because if we don't do it, then how will things develop? I re-emphasize, I'm not an expert. I'm not anything. I'm just a Zimbabwean citizen who just wants to develop his nation so that everyone can live a good life. People can eat, they can go to school. Things don't have to be so expensive and so hard for people. I just want the best for our country, the best for myself, the best for you, the best for the people in the rural areas, the people suffering the most. Let's do something about it. I don't know who said the quote. They said, if not you, then who? And if not now, then when? So I'll leave you with that. I hope I gave you something to think about, something to ponder. Let's do something, particularly as young people. Let's see ourselves as national developers. I think it was one of the American presidents who said, ask not what your country can do for you, but what you can do for your country. And I think as young people, we need to ask ourselves that question. We need to look in the mirror and ask ourselves, what are we doing for our country? So with that, I will leave you. I do hope you have a great week. Reflect, refresh, restart, and I'll see you again next week, Sunday, with another video. Until then,